All right, goal for this video, get this 1983 John Deere 650 cleaned up and ready to sell for its current owner. This John Deere has been neglected for quite a while. It's pretty run down. It's got some missing parts, some damaged parts, the paint's all faded. What we want to do is try to clean it up as best we can so it looks the most presentable and brings the most money. We're not going to try to hide any of the defects that it has on it, but as everybody knows, you'd rather buy something that shines, looks clean, than something covered in grease and with paint that's all faded. So before we begin work on it, we'll go ahead and do a quick walk around so you can see what we're starting with, and so we can show you our progress and ultimately where we end. Okay, so what should you expect to find behind the hood of your John Deere 650? Well, this is supposed to have a Yanmar built twin cylinder diesel that makes about 14 horsepower out at the PTO. Not a high horsepower tractor, okay, especially for the size. I mean, it's a pretty large, heavy built tractor, but it doesn't make a ton of power. It's more than capable of running this mower, but you're not going to run a large implement off the back. Now, let's see what condition ours is in. Oh boy, we have all the goodies. First off, very nice overspray on our hoses. This one's completely green. And in case you ever need to do some troubleshooting with your wiring, don't worry, because it's all green. Wire nuts, we got them. Fram oil filter, we have it. Zip ties, we also have quite a few of those. Ooh, okay, it's a tractor, it's been painted. Who cares? Well, I do, to be honest. You know, you can repaint it, but just try to do something. I mean, just wires hanging off, going to nothing, spray painted green. You know, just everything zip tied to everything else. The overflow cap. You know, it's a 40-year-old tractor. Okay, it's got some issues. But we can at least clean up the overspray, make it a little bit more tidy. And, you know, the things that kind of deter you are the battery from 7 years ago on a diesel that you're selling in winter. Not a lot of confidence with that. Leakage, we'll go ahead and pressure wash that off. And yeah, otherwise, we got a nice exhaust system. Looks pretty good. I don't see any evidence of leaks. It sounded pretty good running last night. Do we have antifreeze? Good sign. Nice and clean and green, not brown, not water. What kind of crud do we got under the oil cap? Not bad. Okay, we can work with this. All right. With that out of the way, it looks like we have a decent starting point to get this thing cleaned up. It's a little cold outside right now, so I'm not going to start by pressure washing the engine, the whole thing, like I normally would. I think I'm going to start with buffing out the hood. First thing we're going to do is get rid of this all thread, so we can swing our arms out here and see if they are bent or not. See a pretty severe angle on this side. I don't know whether that's because they're in right now or, you know, they are twisted up. But either way, this needs to go. Doesn't belong there. We need a pin in our limiting chain so it can actually do its job. I've cracked these nuts loose already. So let's see what it gives us. All right, let's see. That doesn't look too bad. It's out against its limit. And then what's going on here? Oh. Oh. That would be why. Okay. This arm is connected to the deck underneath. So it uses the rear 3-point to lift and lower the deck instead of having a separate hydraulic system further up. But what that means is this wants to kick out to the side because of where the arm is mounted up to the belly mower. So it kind of leans us out at a crazy angle instead of, you know, just floating back and forth. So we need to get a pin from here, this chain, to its mounting point right there, just as this side is. So it keeps from doing that and stays out of our tires. Okay, so I've got a replacement pin here. Tried to match it up to the other side as close as I could. Go ahead and see if that will fit. Try to hold this over, get that in there. All right, looks pretty good. I'll bring you guys around here and show you what we've accomplished. Okay, now that that's done, this looks a lot better. Our arms now match. No more all thread holding them together with our chain hanging down to the ground. You can see our limiting chains are doing exactly what they're supposed to now. So real easy fix. All I did was grab a new pin for this side, put that in, yanked out this all thread. And I've just flipped these pins over because they were upside down, more likely to fall out that way. So put them in the correct way. We will get our seat belt back up on top of the seat, not down, wrapped around our 3-point. I'll take some tools, maybe we'll see how thick this is. Might have to take it off, but I'll go ahead and straighten this out. Looks like they backed into something, probably the 3-point arm there, or the link, and it bent this. Okay, seat belt's now unwound out of the roll bar. It was wrapped around about 3 times on this side and wrapped all down in here on this side underneath the wiring for the lights. So took some time to get that back up on the seat and out of the way. Now I'm going to see about just straightening this out. It's not a big deal, but it kind of sticks out to me. Just make it flatten again here. I doubt it's going to work. I've got a dead blow. See if I can give it a whack there. If it's too thick for that, we'll try something else. Okay, it's pretty flat. We got this little curled edge here. I think I'll take my pipe wrench, just hook it right over the edge of that. See if we can straighten it out. Kind of work it a little bit. Paint's already destroyed, so we're not doing really any damage. We're trying this. A little bit better, huh? Okay. Let's see what else we can find. For this side of the tractor, we got a couple things to take care of. One is a stack of washers right here. Nice and loose. I don't even know why they're here, to be honest. And we need to adjust our brakes, or see if we can get them adjusted. Otherwise, I'm looking around here, we'll grease up the grease fittings on the PTO shaft for the front, and make sure we got pins in place. Make sure there's nothing else that's going to be loose or rattling, no missing bolts, and go from there. Okay, so first things first, I'm going to address this. So I'll come back with some wrenches and get to work. Okay. Pulled the stack off. This is what we got. Oversized washer and a couple of smaller ones. And it wasn't taking up enough room. You can see this stud sticks through further than the threads come out. It's kind of dark here. So we need a spacer. And instead of using that stack up, which rattles around, I dug through the stash and I found this. That slides over there, looks a little bit better. So we'll go ahead and throw our nuts back on. I should take up that room and we won't have that bad rattle that you can hear over top of the engine itself. And just like that, it's done. Just threaded the two nuts on, took a couple seconds, jammed them together, and this looks a lot cleaner than this big thing sitting there rattling away. On to the next item. All right, I'm gonna see if I can fix the other headlight that's not working. So I pulled the socket out, and originally I saw there's no bulb in it. I figured, okay, maybe we just need a bulb. Then I looked down and saw this ground wire. It's kind of hanging out of its connector. So then I noticed it had broken off at some point. So I fished out, or popped out, what was left of the connector out of the back of the socket, and I just went and scrounged up a replacement crimp-on one. So it looks like it'll fit in here. It's probably not going to clip into place. We'll have to kind of manhandle this or hold it when we plug it in. But I'm hoping it makes a good connection. We can pop a bulb in here and we'll have two headlights. And I've been diagnosing the rear work lights and all of that, and I think I can get those working as well. So having working lights on the tractor will just be an added bonus, especially if it's something simple like this. So go ahead and cut off what's left of this old connector, strip it back. It's not too promising. We got some corrosion on this wire here, so I'm going to try to clean that up. I can't cut it back anymore to fresh wire, or else it's not going to reach without splicing in a new piece. So let me clean that up real quick. Okay, went ahead and cleaned up the wire. We got some shiny copper showing. My connector was for a slightly smaller gauge wire, but it's the only one I had. So I stuck an ice pick in the end and kind of spread it open. So now I can slide it over the end of my wire and hopefully crimp it in place. So it slid on. Go ahead and get that crimped. Good idea to use heat shrink on it, but I'm not too concerned in this case. It's in. Let's grab a bulb, plug it into the tractor, and see if we have a working headlight. Okay, well, notice how we have more apart than we do put together. So I went to put this in, and I noticed two things. One, inside here, on the other side of the connector, I just fixed this side, we're missing the male side of the terminal for the same wire. And of course it just slid out of the back of this connector. So the other end's bad. That's no big deal, because I can just plug this together, add a connection on here, and I can just go around the connector on the outside or even pop it back in. Not a problem. Then I noticed when I tried to source a bulb that this isn't just a standard fitting, and John Deere uses some specialty light bulb for the headlights, which I don't have. So I have some bulbs I can just hold against the contacts here and test it, make sure it works, and I can try to get a bulb later. So no big deal, it's just kind of unfortunate. There's more to fix here. And we can see down the line, this plastic's deteriorating here, and these connections points look pretty bad, but it was working. The one headlight was working, and I'm fairly confident if we fix this connection right here and put a bulb in it, we'll still have two working headlights. So I've got another connector. Let's go ahead and splice that in on our ground wire on this side and see what we get. We got it hooked up to the tractor. You see here, made my repair and just bypassed the connector since it was corroded off inside. And that's fixed. Since we only have one bulb, I know this one works. I'm gonna take this out, put it on the other side, and we can test out the light. So, off camera, when I was doing some testing, I found that the connector that used to be right here to unplug the harness for when you take the hood off was extremely corroded. It was making contact intermittently. I went ahead and cut that out and just reconnect the wires straight through. Now, that's not a big problem if you need to take the hood off, because these are just quarter turns. Take the lights off, or we also have connectors right up here at the bulbs themselves. And all you have to do is untape the splice I made, and it unplugs there as well. It's not a big loss. Go ahead and turn the key on and see what we got. Okay, we got both high and low beam. Perfect. Go ahead and take our bulb, put it back in the other side, so we can verify that both sides work. Then it's the last orientation I try. Okay. So we have working lights. I'll just have to find a bulb for the other side and we'll be good to go. So let's move on to the back and see if we can get those work lights going. All right, I'm back here in the back diagnosing the rear hazard lights. What I found was some old repairs that were done improperly. Somebody has taken and installed bullet style connectors on the end of this wiring, and as you can see, one of them has pulled off. And that is because it looks like for a crimper, instead of using the right tool, they just used pliers and kind of mashed it down. Now, I don't have any bullet connectors to fix this one, so I can reattach it over there, but I do have the old one. And because they crimped it so poorly, I was able to use pliers to kind of squeeze it and open it back up. So I believe I can just trim down this excessive amount of bare wire here to something more reasonable, slide this back on and properly crimp it, as well as these others because they are loose, plug it in and see if we have rear work lights. Judging by how corroded this is right here, I'm going to go ahead and strip this back just a hair and see if I can get some fresh wire showing. Sized as well. This is for a larger wire than what is currently being used on. So that's nice and tight. I'll go ahead and crimp these properly. There. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and feed this back through the fender. The plug is on the other side of it, so I'll plug it in and bring you back with results. Does it work or does it not? Okay, it's plugged back in. I already tested it out. I had to play with the connections a little bit. They're pretty dirty, but we have results. So we now have a work light. We don't have our hazards yet, so there is another harness that goes to the other side, so that might be for our hazard lights. It looks like what I repaired here only goes to the rear work light, which now functions. Cool, so we got headlights and a rear work light now. Pretty simple fixes so far, just bad connections. So I'll go ahead and check on the other side and see if I can find some damaged wires. Now I think it's time to try to shine up the paint a little bit. Before you yell at me in the comments, I'll fully admit I don't know what I'm doing when it comes to detailing. Have a Harbor Freight buffer with a pad on it and some polish that I put on here. I know if your paint's really dull, you want to use some kind of cutting compound to get the oxidation off before you just try to polish it, but we got limited supplies, and you know, can't forget it's just a tractor. So as long as it turns out shinier than what it is now, I will chalk this up as a success. I've spread some wax or whatever I've got here, buffing compound, polish. I don't see the container, just some generic car stuff. I've spread it out on here, and I'm going to rub it in with this, and let's see what it does. Okay, so it's making some progress here. I'm gonna go ahead and put a little bit more on. I don't think I had enough. Give it another round and we'll see where we're at. So I went over it again, and you can see from there where the camera's mounted that we do have a big difference in color from where I went across just with one pass to what it was. It even brightened up the yellow stripe as I passed over it. So right now, I think it's worth continuing on. It's not making as much of a difference as I had hoped, but being a respray, and it looks like a cheap respray at that, and having sat outside and faded, it's the best that we can do right now. So I'll go ahead, do a little bit more, and I'll unmount the camera and show you a before and after. Spent a couple minutes on it. It looks really good on camera, actually. You can see we got some shine on the hood here. Looks pretty decent. That's what we started out with. Haven't got that yet. So pretty dull, faded. This looks a little bit more presentable. Again, there's another comparison. What it was to what it is now. I think it's going to clean up really well. At least it's going to look pretty good in pictures, I should say. So we're going to go ahead and finish the hood. I'll do the fenders and the roll bar. And I'll get some of that polish on a rag and go around some of these parts that stick out to you. And we'll come back when we have the finished product. All right, we did a quick and dirty polish on it. It looks a lot better. Did the roll bar, fenders. It's basically everything that stood out to me. And it's a lot better than where it was. So we've got a couple more things that need addressed. We'll go around here and take a look. The brakes, I can't adjust it. We're out of adjustment. Somebody's already done it in the past, so that's just gonna have to stay that way. The seat belt that I dug out, I just noticed has gotten caught in the 3-point at some time in its life. So I'm gonna take and straighten this out. I just tested it. It does still latch and unlatch. See, it's kind of rusty. We'll use some steel wool on that to get some of the rust out, and I'll use some channel locks to kind of bend this back straight so it's presentable, so we can use that again. When it was painted, they sprayed over our yellow check plug here for the oil. So I'm going to use some, probably some paint thinner or acetone or something, try to get that yellow again. What else? Biggest issue I've seen is our throttle here is mounted by 2 bolts. It's hard to see because it's dark, but you can see it flex in there. It's cracked on the top and the bottom, so the whole throttle mount is gonna break off sooner or later. I'm gonna see if I can use some big washers or something to support that. Try to do a quick fix so it doesn't get any worse. Somebody down the line can go ahead and weld it. Since this isn't mine, I'm not going to be welding on it, especially with the fuel tank here. It is diesel and not gas, so the chances of it causing a fire is a lot less, but still, you never know. With the amount of grease and stuff all in here, I don't want to take a chance on it. So I'm going to see what I can do to make this a little bit better, and we're going to remedy those issues, and we'll come back and see what's next after that. But you saw what it looked like before, and this is what we have now. So straightened out, looks a lot better. So now we're gonna see about cleaning it up. Now I mentioned steel wool, and steel wool works really good. I can't find any. So the next best thing is Fast Orange, the hand cleaner. You might be thinking, what? But, I mean, think about it. It's got some pumice in it, some abrasive grit, you know, and that's really all we need to shine this up. So I'm gonna put a little bit of that on a rag, rub it in here, and we'll see how it looks. So hopefully you can see it on camera now. We got some rust, oxidation, it's not very shiny. Same here with the latch. Lots of rust on there. So we'll go ahead and clean it up and see what the Fast Orange will do for us. Okay, polish is done. That's what it looks like now. Not perfect, but a lot better than what it was. So before we had a bunch of rust. It's really dull, nasty looking because it's been hanging back there for who knows how long. Now it looks a little bit more presentable. The seat's going to make a big difference once that's installed, and you'll understand why I went through the trouble of cleaning this up. And I'll go ahead and pressure wash the seat belt later when I wash the tractor, and maybe bring back some color in that. So between that and the seat, this area should look pretty good. Okay, throttle's pulled down, just 2 bolts, and that's off. Let's take a look at our cracks. Yep. So this one on top is especially bad. You can see it's cracked all the way around the nut, which is welded on the back side there. And it started its way up the sheet metal and even around the side of that nut. And the bottom is on its way to doing the same thing. It's cracked all the way along the bottom and it started its way up as well. I said I wasn't going to weld this, but the more I look at it, it would take longer to fix it in a temporary fashion by plating it or doing something else, washers, than it would be to just fix it correctly and, weld it up. So I'm going to get something to remove this paint right here. I'll put a couple welds on there and should be as good as new. Got the welder rolled out. So we'll hook it up and see what happens. Okay, quickly welded that up and bolted it back on. And it's a lot sturdier than what it was before. This thing was flexing all over the place. So I didn't show you the welds because honestly they were atrocious and I'm ashamed of them, but they're holding and it's better than what it was. So that was the goal. That's done. Now we'll find something else to fix. It's a new day. I think it's going to be the last. We're going to try to finish this up, get some pictures taken and get it thrown up online to see what happens. So we've still got a lot of work to do, but we'll try to go ahead and knock some things out. Now, off camera this morning, I went ahead and I had this lawnmower seat cover sitting around. It's a little small, but it fits over it, and it looks a lot better than that ripped up seat. I went ahead and took off the slow-moving vehicle sign because the plastic mount's broken. It's all damaged, and I couldn't get the cover on with it on there. I guess the owner isn't going to buy a seat like they said or mentioned they would. I mentioned it and then they act like, they didn't want to spend the money on it. And I know the seats are kind of expensive, but again, it really does help out the value. But if we can't get a new seat, this is about as close as we can get for now. A couple of small things, like I said, I want to fix. Mainly, I'm going to start out with making a battery hold down or trying to piece one together so we can get rid of this string. I have some miscellaneous parts laying around, a couple straps and some J-bolts. So we'll see if anything works. If it does, it just looks a lot cleaner than having rope or twine holding the battery in. So let's do that. And just like that, it's done. So it only took a minute or two. Just scrap parts I had laying around. Found some little pieces of pipe as spacers because my rods here were a little bit too long. But the battery is now secure. No more string, no more rope hanging off of it, and no more chance of this falling over and grounding out on something and causing issues like that. So another project down. Let's go ahead and see what else we can wrap up here today. So I wanted to do something about the missing lid on the coolant overflow here because it just looked bad, and you hit bumps, you get on a hill. If this is somewhat full, that's going to be splashing out. You're getting dirt in it, and you don't want to be sucking that back in the radiator. I didn't think there'd be much of a chance of me finding something, but I looked over and I saw this old pill bottle, and it caught my attention. I use this for holding parts. They're pretty handy, but this lid I saw has screw threads on the top. I happened to stick it in here and found out that it actually threads into the top of the overflow perfectly. What I'm going to do is just pop a hole in the center, just drop the hose back in just like it would have been on the original cap, and that's going to be a lot better than what we had. And it's back together. Went ahead and filled up the overflow, drilled the hole in the center to drop this down in, and ground out a little notch in the side of the lid so the hose can sit down and rest in there. So I can pop this out and put it back in. Doesn't fit the tightest, but again, it's better than a big open hole in the top there. Got all the tools cleaned up. It's back together. I'm gonna go ahead and back it out, see if the garden hose is thawed out. If it is, I'm gonna hook up the pressure washer, get all the grime out of here that I can. You see there's tons of grease down there on the deck. The wheels are pretty nasty. I think once the wheels shine up a bit, it's gonna look a lot better. Deck's been repainted. It looks like it's flaking. It'd be nice to go over that and see if I could take off some of that flaking paint, make it more of a uniform color, or else I'm gonna have to go buy a can of paint to sand it and touch it up, because that's what sticks out to me now. Seat looks a lot better, paint looks a lot better. We fixed a lot of small things. It's starting to look like a decent tractor. You can really see the shine from this angle. Okay, let's get it cleaned up and see where we're at. Washing's done, and look at the difference. I mean, especially the wheels, they're just so nasty. So we also took off a lot of the green paint that was on the deck, which is good. It peeled off. We can see our decals now a lot better. I wish there was a way I could get the rest of that green off so it was all yellow, but I just don't think there is a quick way about it. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it, because in the end it doesn't make that big a difference, but it would look a lot better if the deck was all yellow. I think that's all I'm going to do for now on it. I'm going to take it out and get some pictures and see if we can get anybody interested. If I don't get anybody within the first couple days, usually you can kind of judge how popular it is, if you're going to have a sale or not. If I don't get anybody interested, I'll go ahead and do a little bit more. And we'll go from there. So let's get some pictures.